doing? I feel okay. Yeah, we're coming out right around the corner. Crazy. No, no. Oh. We're like we generally. Not they.
Oh, surprise.
Oh gosh, that would be bad. People do it, but yeah, yeah, I am. Uncomfortable, but I think that's to be expected. Right. I'm sure. I'm sure. Right. That's what my mom keeps telling me. She was like, remember, you had this great thing at the end of all this. She's like, it's not like you're just feeling uncomfortable for the sake of being uncomfortable.
The one thing that I recall when I always came back from
I have not been doing a good enough job of that.
so, but even if you pull out your gesture and you
Mhm.
start to pull out,
Yeah,
especially now.
yeah. I have noticed that like a lot of swelling.
That's
So need to keep my feet up more. Yeah.
sitting over at the office and I was sitting all day, especially.
Out of the circle and make a closer circle. Yeah, that would probably be good, right? Yeah, to be a little more. Could maintain the circle though, that would be awesome. Oh, thank you.
So pretty.
It is. It is. Ambiance. Very important. Thanks, Janaya. That's great. Okay, we'll wait just another minute. there are a couple people out there who are coming in. We're gonna wait just another minute and then we'll start. Come join us in the circle, Howard. In the circle. No, 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 no. No, 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 no. I want you to be in the circle. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We'll move the chairs.
Oh, you saved seats for us. I did.
Oh, very nice.
We're getting done.
I guess so.
No, she saved seats.
Very good. We made the circle a little smaller.
Okay, great. Excellent.
Okay. So.
What's that?
But if you don't use
I
the
think
mic,
people will join the stream.
But we're not streaming.
Till 10,
We said we weren't streaming.
that's
Yeah,
fine.
yeah.
And I'm just saying that you don't have to use the microphone for the sound, even though it's a much smaller group. than
We'll
it
use
would be
it.
in a while.
We'll use it.
I just wanted to know.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us for our Tisha B'Av commemoration. So, as we advertised, we're going to start with some study. And since this is a relatively intimate group, I figure we can kind of study together as a group. And if people have questions or comments, we'll just share aloud. And if you'd rather just listen and observe, that is totally fine too. And just a note before we begin with our study, many of you probably saw the email that we sent out this afternoon about Israel. And as we said in the email, we are really brokenhearted about the situation unfolding in Israel at this moment, and specifically the wielding of power that we find that is really unnecessary and inappropriate by the current prime minister and his government. And unfortunately, this is happening coinciding with a holiday where we mourn things that have happened in Jerusalem in our tradition. So we felt it was apt, as we were discussing the past couple of days, how are we going to address the congregation? What are we going to say about what's happening right now, the current state of affairs, to highlight also the sad irony that tonight starts Tisha B'Av, the commemoration of the destruction of the first and second temples in Jerusalem, along with many other calamities that have befallen the Jewish people, while we are watching these unbelievable things unfold in the Jewish state, in the same city where these things took place thousands of years ago. History repeats itself sometimes in different ways. But we hold that in mind while we engage in this study today, and I think it can be fruitful for us to think about how we can apply it to our modern day context. Yeah, Howard.
Can I ask you a question? And I didn't read the articles, and I do plan on reading them, but it was, I had some
Can you speak a little louder? So.
some people that I do business with, we were talking about the situation in Israel, because I've been to Israel 5 times in the last 5 years. I've been there 3 times. My son lives there. In this, and I've lived long enough to have lived through a couple of different eras in the United States, through the 60s, and I love the fact that I disagree with what's going on in Israel, but I love the fact that people can protest in Israel, people can vote in Israel, similar as to how we voted 2 years ago, and we voted Biden in office, so there would be new, Democrats will be able to set a new agenda. A new agenda can be set in Israel.
Yeah.
They were voted in. There's still a democracy there, and in a good part of the world, if these protests were going on, the majority of these people would be killed or jailed. So I know my wife is very worried about my son living in Tel Aviv, but I love the fact it's a democracy, and even though I disagree with it, you have the power to vote and make changes.
Yeah.
And it's happened. I majored in political science. If you look at the history of this country, it happens over and over again.
Yeah.
There's a pendulum that swings, and I believe it will swing back. At some point, you could be wrong. It's like people who always say that the stock market's going to go down every year. Eventually, it does go down. Then it goes back up again. So I don't know. And
Yeah.
I'm not happy, but I'm not a pessimist that it won't change.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
just wanted to know
Yeah.
those articles.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
What was, I didn't read them, so I will read them.
Yeah.
Is there total pessimism or is there optimism?
Well, I want to spend now thinking about Tisha B'Av, so I'm going to put your question in our parking lot for now, but if that's okay with you. But I will say that I plan to talk about Israel on Friday from the Bima. Yeah, so I would love for you to. Yeah, I don't know about that, but it's a very good question, and I think it's probably a question that a lot of people share, and there's a very nuanced answer to it. I think it's a yes and a no, just standing on one foot. So, but let's continue that conversation. We can continue it offline too, and.
You brought it up. That's the only reason.
Yeah,
It was
totally.
in the back of my brain before I came
Totally.
in.
Yeah. No, it's fine. It is. I put it in your brains. But yes, we'll continue to think about that as we go through the evening. So, Tisha B'Av is the commemorates the destruction of the first and second temples of Jerusalem. So here in Yoma 9b, which is from the Babylonian Talmud, Masechet Moed, we find an explanation for why the second temple was destroyed. Directly preceding this, we have an explanation for why the first temple was destroyed. It was very ritualistic. Right? It says that the first temple was destroyed because of all of the rituals that the Jewish people were doing incorrectly. And here we have a very different explanation for why the second temple was destroyed. So would someone read from Yoma 9b, this whole paragraph here for us? Nice and loud. Yeah, thanks, Amy. Perfect.
However, considering that the people during
Thanks, Amy. So here we learn a couple really important things. So first of all, we learn, according to the rabbis, why was the temple destroyed the second time around? Wanton hatred. How can we define, or how do you think we could define wanton hatred? Another way of saying it in English is baseless hatred. Oh, that there can be acceptable hatred. Right, and this is not acceptable hatred. Yes, right. So that it's definitely developing a contradiction, right, between two types of hatred. And what have we seen? Maybe we've seen things in our own lives, examples of baseless hatred or wanton hatred. Racism. Yeah? What? Racism. Yeah, yeah. Anti-Semitism. Right? Yeah. Things. Yep. Yeah, a very closed-minded attitude. Yeah, it's hating someone for no reason whatsoever, right? Maybe, or that reason could be made up in a number of ways or self-justified. So this in Hebrew is called sinat chinam. I've highlighted it in the Hebrew on the right, and we see it in the next quote here. So will someone read the, so we see that the temple was destroyed because of this thing called baseless hatred or sinat chinam. And interestingly enough, the rabbis say that baseless hatred is equivalent to the three worst things that you could possibly do as a Jew. Idol worship, right? Forbidden sexual relations, and bloodshed, killing another person. That hating someone without a reason to do so is equivalent to those three things, and that is why the temple was destroyed, because there was baseless hatred among the people during that period. So if we read, let's read from Rabbi David Hellman. Will someone volunteer to read in the weeks and days? Thanks, Lauren.
In the weeks and days leading up to Tisha B'Av, we have become accustomed to hearing about the concept of Sinat Haman and how our sages taught that it was such baseless hatred within the Jewish people that led to the destruction of the Second Temple. Presented as the quintessential example of this communal plague is the story of Hamas and Bar Hamas, in which a wealthy host publicly embarrassed his enemy, who mistakenly came to his party, seemingly for no reason at all, thus setting in motion a chain of events leading to Rome's devastation of Jerusalem.
Very good. So according to Rabbi Hellman, what he's saying is the same thing we read in Yoma, right? That baseless hatred is believed to be the reason that the temple was destroyed. And temple was destroyed again by the Romans, right? It wasn't destroyed by our own people, it was destroyed by the Roman people. And he says, and there's this quintessential example that we have in Jewish tradition of these two men. Their names are Kamsa and Bar Kamsa. And so I thought it would be worthwhile to bring this story of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa, this very famous Talmudic story, into our study space today, so that we can really try to understand how the rabbis looked at this concept of sinat chinam and how that they believe that this led us to the destruction of the temple. And it's a wonderful story. It's a very sad story, but I think everyone will enjoy reading it. So the story really comes in 3 parts. So if we turn to page 2, again, we find this story in the Talmud, in Gittin. Gittin is a part of the Talmud that focuses on marriage and divorce. We know that a divorce statement, a divorce legal document in Jewish tradition is called a get. So Gittin is the plural of that word get. Interesting that this story shows up in a section of the Talmud where we're talking about marriage and divorce. It really has very little to do with marriage and divorce, but that gives you a little taste of what the Talmud is like. It starts in one place and then ends in a very, very different place. It goes in circles and circles, and eventually it gets to where it's trying to go, but we have so many stories and ideas that are presented that teach us something. So will someone read Act 1, Gittin 55b? Great, Ria. And then Janai will read the next one. Beautiful reading. Ria. Fabulous. I love that. Very interpretive. No. This is Lamentations is a text from Tanakh. This is from the Talmud. Well, we're going to read some Lamentations later during our service in a little bit. So, what's happening here? Who's Bar Kamsa? What is he trying to do when he gets to the dinner? And what does this host say that he must do? He must leave. Why?
We don't know why he's the enemy. We just know he's his enemy. He's the enemy of his friend.
Yes. So interestingly, if you're interested about Talmud and the way it works, the bold is the literal translation of the Aramaic, and the non-bold is what Sefaria, which is this amazing tool, translated so that we can understand it better. Because otherwise, without the non-bold, it wouldn't make any sense to us.
He not only went to him, but he publicly humiliated him.
Yes.
He physically took it by the hand. He pulled him up. And he verbally threw him out in front of everybody else in the room.
Yes. Yeah.
Our Kamsa, father and son.
That's a great question. We don't know exactly. They potentially could be. Bar in Aramaic means ben, which means son of. So it could be that they're father and son, but there are also a lot of people in the Talmud that have the same name. And so we can't like presume it for sure, but it's a definite possibility that they're related in some way. So, right, as Ria said, how do you think he felt after he pleaded? He offered not only to pay for his own meal, but then he offered to pay for the whole meal, and still he was kicked out. How would you have felt in that situation? Murderous. Humiliated. Humiliated and wanting to get revenge. Great. Elaine has read ahead. So let's go to Act 2. Janaya, will you read for us?
After having been cast out from the feast, Bar Kokhba said to himself, since the sages were sitting there and did not detest the actions of the host, although they saw how he humiliated me, learn from it that they were content with what he did. I will therefore go and inform against them to the king. He went and said to the Roman emperor, the Jews have rebelled against you. The emperor said to him, who says that this is the case? Bar Kokhba said to him, don't test them. Send them an offering to be brought in honor of the government and see whether they will sacrifice it. The emperor went and sent with him a choice 3-year-old calf. When Bar Kokhba was coming with the calf to the temple, he made a blemish on the calf's upper lip, and some say he made a blemish on its eyelids. A place where, according to us, i.e. Halacha, it is a blemish, but according to him, the Gentile rules of their offerings, is not a blemish. Therefore, when Bar Kokhba brought the animal to the temple, the priests would not sacrifice it on the altar since it was blemished, but they could also not explain this satisfactorily to the Gentile authorities. We do not consider it blemished.
Very good. Excellent. So what does Bar Kokhba do after he's kicked out of the house? He goes straight to the Roman emperor. The Romans are occupying Jerusalem, right, at this time. And the Roman emperor is really in charge of the Jewish community and how the religious life works. The emperor is not in Jerusalem, but in this situation we're envisioning that he's going to the emperor, he makes his way there.
Let's put it this way. The man really did what was necessary, however difficult.
To get revenge. Yes, exactly. And he says to the emperor, the Jews are rebelling against you, which is, of course, something the emperor doesn't want to hear. And so we know in Jewish tradition, in order to offer a sacrifice or an offering at the temple, the animal has to be in perfect condition. But according to the Roman rules, it doesn't have to be in perfect condition. And so Bar Kokhba puts a little nick, right, like a shaving nick, on the lip of the calf, and he says now they won't be able to accept it, and this is the way that I will prove that the Jewish people are against the Romans, because they won't sacrifice in honor of the king, and the king will be very mad about that. And Bar Kokhba is Jewish.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's part of the concept, right, of sinat chinam, baseless hatred, specifically in regard to the destruction of the temple, that there was baseless hatred occurring not only between the Romans and the Jews, but between the Jews themselves. And that is really one of the most powerful aspects of the story, which we're going to see, that not only people who you suspect might hate you or might go up against you because they're different from you, they have a different perspective, a different heritage, ritual, religion, but these are people within their own community that he's taking revenge because he felt so humiliated. Okay, now will someone read Act 3? Please.
Blemish notwithstanding, the sages spoke to sacrifice the animal and offer it to the inheritance and to the feast, because
Thank you. So now that we've read all 3 acts, how do we get from the beginning of our story of Bar Kamsa sitting down at this feast to the end when the Jews and the Romans are at war with one another and the temple is destroyed? Very complex. A lot of it is malice, yes. He's malintentioned. He's doing something because he's so upset about how he was treated by his fellow Jew that he goes through this whole series of events in order to piss off the emperor so much that the emperor says, I'm going to start a war against the Jewish people. Ah. So one of the articles I read also asked that, and it also said, well, how in the world did Bar Kamsa get an audience with the emperor so quickly? So we can presume from this text that he was probably a very wealthy Jewish man and that he had special connections with the emperor. This was probably not the first time that he had seen the emperor or been in relationship with him. And so we can assume that he had a lot of status in, Ryan, why don't you come into the circle? in Israelite society. And so that's probably why he wasn't questioned. So all this to say, this is not necessarily history, right? This is not necessarily how the temple was destroyed, per se. We know that the Romans destroyed the temple. We know from historians during that time, such as Philo, we know some of how the inner workings of what was happening. But this story really gives us a symbolic way to understand such a day of mourning for our people. So let's read what Rabbi David Hellman says continued. And this is very long, so what I'm going to do... Okay, I'm going to read the first paragraph, and then I'm going to skip a little bit. So this tale is not just about petty spite, but it recognizes the complexities of hatred and the real political and social dimensions that might engender it. Learning the lesson of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa is thus about more than simply avoiding the jealousies that arise in daily life. So he's saying it's not just about what happens when we sit down at someone's table and they say, I don't really want you here, right? It is not enough just to tell everyone to be nicer. We can't say just be nicer to one another and that will then prevent the destruction of Jerusalem, the destruction of another temple, which doesn't exist right now. To truly rid ourselves of the destructive forces that spawn hate requires us to engage deeper and with more complex issues as individuals and communities. And even when we take principled stands on matters of supreme importance, it is essential that we do not lose sight of other people's humanity. So if we go down into the middle of that second paragraph, however, the story of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa engages with an even greater and more complex challenge: to not allow legitimate disagreements over issues of principle, even ones of incredible consequence, to turn into conflicts filled by and fueled with hatred for the human beings on the other side of the debate. So I know that was a lot that we just read, but does anyone want to summarize in your own words what is Rabbi Hellman saying here? Say a little more. Susan.
I see the connection. I find this very interesting. This wasn't a democracy that they lived in. The king was, the king, it's.
Yes, that's right.
What's going on with the protests in Europe now, in France, and England, and it's a democracy. People aren't being killed and thrown out of their own homeland.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
You can compare it to other countries, not only Israel.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like,
Yeah.
I miss that particular.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. I think where I see the connection here is I agree with you, like that's a profound difference, right? These are democracies in our societies that we're dealing with. Even if they're veering more away from democracies towards dictatorship, they're still democracies. People still have the right to vote and they still have the right to free speech, which are basic tenets of democracies, right? However, in this case, what we're seeing is this hatred that is letting people within the same groups destroy one another. And I think if we think about specifically the land of Israel, this is supposed to be a Jewish state. Yes, it is a democracy, but the fact that we have these such contentious relationships within the government, among Jews, I mean, we see it too among Jews even in New York City, right? Like we see it between sometimes a Reform Jew and a Haredi Jew. Not all, I'm not going to generalize, but occasionally, right? And so not to allow legitimate disagreements that we have, which I think a legitimate disagreement maybe is how we run a country, right? It is. But to not let that turn into baseless hatred. To not let that turn into vilifying the human being on the other side. And rather saying, I disagree with what you're saying, but to engage in dialogue. Because that is really, I think, how people continue to move forward.
That's the way it should be done. It isn't done that way.
It's not always done that way.
The most recent president before Biden.
Correct. It's not always done that way. But that's how I understand the connection here.
The analogy holds in that each actor.
Speak a little louder so everyone can hear.
The analogy holds because each actor feels utterly and completely justified in their position and in their antipathy toward
Yeah.
the other actor. And that's the thing that's hard to get over.
Yes. Everyone feels like their position is the right position, right?
And that the other person's position is dangerous, humiliating.
Yes. Yeah.
So somehow when I come to some of these lectures and programs, I remember it happened, I don't know if it was last year or the year before, because I remember sitting in a circle with
Yes.
I bring it down to the micro. I feel like what we're talking about here is the macro, and I bring it down, I have this instinct to bring it down to the micro and what goes on in the family, and not being heard, and issues escalating, and one person feeling that they're right and their way is the way it is, and the other person doesn't have, is vilified and doesn't have a right to an opinion. And I know this isn't a therapy session, but when I read these texts and I hear, that's what I have to say is, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking of the scholar in resident. Yeah, the sound is like evaporating.
Do you want to use the microphone?
That's okay. Yeah, I'll try and speak up.
Okay.
Unless you want me to.
Sure.
Sitting here and I'm remembering the scholar in residence program that we had, and where peace starts, and it starts in the home, and spitefulness that happens in the home gets taken outside the home into the universe.
Yeah.
So that's my little contribution.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Yes, Susan and then Elaine.
The most crucial thing to me here is Thomas's slander was accepted by the authorities. So at the root of the beginning of the war is something that wasn't necessarily happening.
Ah, something that was untrue. Yeah, very good. Yeah, Elaine.
So we often history that history repeats itself. In this country, we had a civil war when we couldn't agree. And now we feel like we're almost at that same point again because we decide can hear or listen to the other side.
Right.
And we could very well be who we were. And history just tends to repeat itself.
Yes. So we wanted to present this text to you as just a different way for us to engage with the holiday of Tisha B'Av, with a way to think about, a way to understand how the rabbis looked at this holiday, and maybe for us to be able to take even some small learnings, maybe we can think about sinat chinam, baseless hatred in the home, how it bubbles over into other parts of society, to our politics, to our international relations, other countries, right? And understand that while this might not be historically accurate, that according to our tradition, this simple concept of baseless hatred sparked all of these calamities that we mourn on this day. And so as we think about that together, as we move into our service, I invite you to give yourself a lot of grace and understanding while you think about who are people that maybe I could listen to a little bit more in my life. What are some ideas that maybe I haven't given a full chance to listening to them? Have I really examined my point of view in a long time? And I think that, for me, really right now, especially in the climate that we're in, is one of the main messages that I take away from Tisha B'Av, from this idea of mourning the destruction of the temple. How can we learn a lesson from this holiday and then apply that lesson to our lives in a way that feels meaningful on a day-to-day basis? So thank you so much for studying. We'll continue with our Tisha B'Av service. And
Just give me 1 minute to
of course,
tune my guitar.
feel free to stretch your legs if you'd like, if you want. Typically, Tisha B'Av is a fasting holiday, but we also know that in Judaism, you are not supposed to fast if it ever proves to be difficult for your health, and it is very, very hot. So please drink water. We, on purpose, don't have an oneg because we didn't feel that was quite appropriate on a fasting holiday. But we did want to have some water because it's really important for you to take care of yourselves. And we're grateful that you're here and you're joining us. So we have, everyone has, in addition to the study sheet, everyone had, should we turn one more on? We are.
Yes, at the end.
I'm going to call Jonathan.
But hold on a minute. This is.
Oh,
There we go.
hey, Jonathan. Would you mind turning one of the lights off and keeping one on? Thank you. That's perfect. That's great. Yeah. Thank you. Oh, thank you. Okay, bye. So we have our songs here, our readings. So feel free to follow along.
I'm just going to tune.
Sure.
Hashivenu, Adonai Elecha, V'nashuva, Chadish, Chadish, Yameinu Kikedem. Hashivenu, Hashivenu, Adonai Elecha, V'nashuva, Chadish, Chadish, Yameinu Edem. Eli, Eli, shelo yigamer leolam, hachol v'hayam, rishru shel hamayim, berak hashamayim, tefilat adam, hachol v'hayam, rishru shel hamayim, berak hashamayim, tefilat adam. O God, my God, I pray that these things never end. The sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of the heart, the sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of the heart.
Sion, will you not ask after the well-being of your captive ones? Rabbi Yehuda Halevi. Sion, will you not ask after the well-being of your captive ones? For they, the remainder of your flock, constantly asks after your welfare. From every direction, from west, east, north, and south, you receive messages of peace. You also receive greetings from those who are full of hope for you, who shed tears that flow like the dew on Mount Hermon, and who yearn to shed tears on your hills. We read together, "My tears for your plight are so many, but when I dream of the return of your captives, then I am like a harp playing your songs. My heart longs greatly for all the places where your righteous ones used to meet. There the divine presence dwells in your midst, Sion, and your Creator once opened your gates so that your gates could face the gates of heaven. Indeed, God's glory was your light, and no sun, nor moon, nor stars were needed as your luminaries. If only I could be a wanderer in the places where God revealed God's self to your prophets and your seers. If only I could sprout wings so that I could fly freely. My broken heart could then wander around and about your borders. Zion, the beautiful one, you have always attracted love and affection. With you, the souls of your companions are forever tied. They rejoice when you are in peace and prosperity, and they feel your pain over your desolation and weep over your ruins. To whom can your priests and rulers be compared? To whom can your prophets and to whom can your Levites and officers be likened? May your power, Sion, last forever. Your crown shall endure throughout the generations. We'll continue with a chanting of chapter 1 of Eicha, Lamentations, verses 1 through 6. And unlike traditional books of the Torah, when we read Lamentations, we actually do not have a blessing that we say before we chant.
Eicha, Eicha, Yasheva Vadad, Ha'ir Rabatiyam, Hayeta Kamana, Rabati Vagoyim, Sarati Bamidinot, Hayeta Lamas, Bachotiv Kebalayla, V'dimata alecheya, en la menachem mikol ohaveha, koreha bagaduva, hayula lo yevim. Galata Yehuda meoni umerov avodah, Hi yasheva vagoyim lo matzah manoach, korodefea hisiguha ben hametzarim. Darchei Tzion avelot, mi beli bae moed, kol she'areha shomemin, kohaneha nenachim. Betuloteha nugot v'himala, hayu yutzareha lerosh oyeveha shalu, Ki Adonai hoga arov pisha'eha olaleha, halechu shevi lifnei tzar, vayetze mibat Zion kol hadara, hayu sareha, K'hayalim lo matzeu mireh, vayelechu velo choach lifnei rodef.
Alas, lonely sits the city once great with people. She that was great among nations is become like a widow. The princess among states is become a thrall. Bitterly she weeps in the night, her cheek wet with tears. There is none to comfort her. Of all her friends, all her allies have betrayed her. They have become her foes. Judah has gone into exile because of misery and harsh oppression. When she settled among the nations, she found no rest. All her pursuers overtook her in the narrow places. Zion's roads are in mourning, empty of festival pilgrims. All her gates are deserted. Her priests sigh. Her maidens are unhappy. She is utterly disconsolate. Her enemies are now the masters. Her foes are at ease. Because the Eternal has afflicted her for her many transgressions, her infants have gone into captivity before the enemy. Gone from fair Zion are all that were her glory. Her leaders were like stags that found no pasture. They could only walk feebly before the pursuer.
Al Naharot, Al Naharot, Al Naharot, Pavel. Sham Yashavnu, Yashavnu, Gam Bachinu, Bezochrenu, Bezochrenu et Zion, by the waters of Babylon. We lay down and wept for thee, Zion. We remember thee, Zion. Al Naharot, Al Naharot, Al Naharot, Pavel. Sham Yashavnu, Yashavnu, Gam Bachinu, Bezochrenu, Bezochrenu et Zion.
We'll read the next reading on page 3 responsively. Hashivenu, Return Us, a poem for Tisha B'Av by Alana J. Straight. Return us to ourselves. Return us to the earth.
Return us to our land, the land beneath our feet.
Return us to this moment. Return us to our purpose. Return us to our deepest wishes, our shared loves, our clear visions. Return us to ourselves. Return us to our good questions, our bare feet, our brilliant minds, our singing voices. Return us to our places of peacemaking.
Turn us to trusting each other and ourselves.
Return us, turn us, and we will dance and be held, and behold that we are whole, and be in harmony with you.
Turn us, keep turning us, for sweetness is within us, and longs to return to you. I want to share this piece, Samachti be'omrim li. The words are, I rejoiced when they said to me, let's go up to the house of God. Our feet are standing within your gates, O Jerusalem. Jerusalem is built as a city bound up together, to which tribes of God go up to Israel to give thanks in the name of God. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. They who love you shall prosper. May peace be within your walls and tranquility within your towers. For my brethren and companions' sake, I will say, peace be unto you. Because of the house of God, I will seek your good. Samakti be'omrim li, Bet Adonai nelech, Omdot hayu ragleinu, Bisharayich Yerushalayim, Yerushalayim habnuya, Keir shechubra la yachdav, Shesham alu shiftei ha'edut leYisrael, lehodot l'shem Adonai. Shalu shalom Yerushalayim, Yishlayu ohavayich, Yehi shalom bechelech, Shalva be'armenotayich, Leman chai v'rehai, Adabrana shalom bach, Leman beit Adonai Eloheinu, avaksha tov lach. Leman beit Adonai Eloheinu, avaksha tov lach. And we will do the last, I'll chant the end of the book of Eicha. And what's interesting about the end of the book of Eicha is that for any book of the Torah or of the Bible, you never end on a bad note. And so, you'll hear the text of Hashivenu Adonai Elecha v'nashuva chadesh yameinu kekedem. Help us to return, God, to you and renew our days as in days of old. But that's the second to last verse. So after the last verse, we then go back and we sing that verse again. Ata Adonai leolam teshev, kisacha ledor vador. Lama lanetzach tishkachenu, ta'azvenu leorech yamim. Hashivenu Adonai elecha v'nashuva, chadesh yameinu kekedem. Ki imaos me'astanu, קצפת עלינו עד מאוד. השיבנו אדוני אליך ונשובה, חדש ימינו כקדם.
But you, O Eternal, are enthroned forever. Your throne endures through the ages. Why have you forgotten us utterly, forsaken us for all time? Take us back, O God, to yourself, and let us come back. For truly you have rejected us. You have bitterly raged against us. Take us back, O God, to yourself, and let us come back. Renew our days as of old. Before we conclude with Hashivenu again and Hatikva, the Israeli national anthem, I wanted to share an excerpt from Psalm 137, which the song that Cantor Kipnis led us in, By the Shores of Babylon, that is based on this psalm. By the rivers of Babylon, there we sat and wept as we thought of Zion. There on the poplars we hung up our lyres, for our captors asked us there for songs, our tormentors for amusement. Sing us one of the songs of Zion. How can we sing a song of the eternal on alien soil? If I forget you, O Jerusalem, let my right hand wither. Let my tongue stick to my palate if I cease to think of you, if I do not keep Jerusalem in memory, even at my happiest hour.
Hashivenu, Hashivenu, Adonai elecha, v'nashuva, Chadish, Yameinu Kekedem. Chadish, Yameinu Kekedem.
You can find the words of Hatikva, the national anthem for the state of Israel, at the back of your source sheet that we looked at earlier today from our text study. The very back, page 6.
Why don't we rise, if I can get this microphone to stay. Good enough. Fatemi
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us as we commemorated Tisha B'Av this evening. Stay safe, stay cool, and we'll see you soon.